Madam President, I want to salute a member of my staff before I make this statement. His name is Chris Holman. He's been with me a number of years. He has a special passion for people who are languishing in prisons around the world for so-called political crimes. And he has convinced me to make this my cause as well. And time after time, we have been successful in seeing the release of these political prisoners simply by speaking on the floor and addressing the embassies of the countries where they're in prison and trying to put some political pressure on the leaders of those countries to release those prisoners. You wouldn't believe that would work, would you, in an authoritarian regime? But it turns out it does. And over the years, we have been successful in helping many political prisoners be released. Today, I'd like to address that topic again. There are political prisoners languishing in jails around the world for nothing more than advocating for human rights and political freedom. These brave souls, often journalists, activists, opposition leaders, are often led to believe they or their efforts to push for freedoms are forgotten. I come to the floor today to tell them that is not the case. Let me start with a particularly cruel and troubling set of cases. Saudi writer Raif Badawi and his lawyer, Walid Abu al-Khair. Badawi was arrested in 2012 for his peaceful writings, charged with apostasy, sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2012 and 1,000 lashes, at least 50 of which were carried out despite international uproar. Badawi suffers poor health, hypertension. His condition has worsened during 10 years in prison. I had the honor of meeting his wife, Insaf Haider, here in Washington, D.C. some years ago. She is living in exile in Canada with their young children after facing threats to her life in Saudi Arabia. Badawi's lawyer, Walid Abu al-Khair, a leading human rights activist, also was arrested in 2014 and sentenced to 10 years in prison and a 15-year travel ban. As these two men near the latter years of their sentences, I once again appeal to the government of the Saudis to free them. They have suffered enough. I also call for the release of Filipino Senator Leila de Lima, who just passed her 4th year languishing in jail in the Philippines. Here's her photo in her cell where she sends out letters, which I received recently. As a leading human rights advocate, she has criticized the repressive actions of President Rodrigo Duterte. From time to time, Senator de Lima writes me from that cell. Let me share a short excerpt from this brave woman who incredibly, after 4 years in confinement, still maintains her sense of humor. She wrote, "Warm greetings from my detention quarters at the Philippine National Police Custodial Center, Camp Crame. I do not know how long I'll remain behind bars, but there's one thing that I'm sure, my will to fight for what is right continues to be undeterred." She's not alone in being targeted by Duterte. Many of us have spoken about his political harassment of Filipino journalist Maria Ressa, who received her 9th arrest warrant in November and 10th in January. I've met with many in the Filipino-American community in Illinois. We have a great, great community of Filipinos in the Chicagoland area and across the state. I know that they and colleagues here, like Senators Markey and Leahy, will continue to support efforts to see a more accountable and democratic Philippines. Lastly, let me turn to the United Arab Emirates, where one of that nation's top human rights defenders, Ahmed Mansour, also just passed his 4th year in jail. You see, Mansour was arrested under the guise that his social media post advocating for human rights threatened the social harmony of the UAE. He's considered to be one of the last human rights defenders in the Emirates, as peacefully advocates for freedom of expression, fair trials, and the humane treatment of prisoners. Since his troubling sentencing in 2017, he has endured solitary confinement and cruelly been deprived of visits with his family. Despite the dismal conditions of his incarceration, he remains steadfast in his commitment to human rights, even conducting multiple hunger strikes in protest of jail conditions, the same conditions he spoke out against before his detention. It is long overdue that Emiratis let this man go. America's strength around the world comes not only from its military and its economy, but also from the power of its ideals. I can tell you from the many former prisoners who have come to visit me over the years that the support of this body and this Congress and the American people that we may just take for granted as another speech on the floor of the Senate can make a difference. They come to learn that someone actually mentioned their name on the floor of the United States Senate in Washington, D.C. It sustains them, it encourages them, it gives them hope, and it puts pressure on the governments that jail them to justify and rationalize the cruel treatment that they're responsible for. So let me remind Raif Badawi, Walid Abukir, Senator Leila de Lima, Maria Ressa, and Abad Mansour, you are not forgotten. We will continue to advocate for your freedom, and we hope that it comes someday soon. Madam President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.